As our dialogue resumed, I realized the devil was far from finished. If the earlier chapters revealed his methods, this confession would strip away his last defenses, exposing the machinery behind every fear, every excuse, every wasted dream. The devil seemed almost eager, perhaps too eager to explain the full extent of his power, and, most importantly, the cracks in his armor. I began by asking him to clarify his central weapon. You have said fear is your greatest tool, that drifting is your most effective strategy. But what makes them so enduring? Why do even the wisest and most self-aware fall back under your influence? The devil replied with chilling candor, because fear is primal. It speaks to the oldest part of the mind, the part that cares more about avoiding pain than seeking purpose. Drifting is merely the path of least resistance. It is fear dressed as caution, passivity disguised as wisdom. He elaborated, fear is self-renewing. It needs little nourishment, only a spark, a rumor, a memory, a doubt. Drifting does the rest, carrying people away from their ambitions, convincing them that inaction is the safest choice. The devil confessed to delighting in how society itself amplifies fear. Schools reward conformity, not courage. Families pass down caution as a legacy. News and gossip stoke anxiety until it is the common language of a generation. My work is made easy by a world designed to encourage caution. I pressed him on the subject of control. If your influence is so pervasive, why do some people manage to resist? What cracks appear in your system? For the first time, the devil hesitated. Awareness is a virus I can't eradicate. The moment a person questions their fear, when they say, "What if I try?" instead of "What if I fail?" my grip begins to weaken. Awareness breeds action, and even one small act can interrupt the cycle of drifting. He admitted with some frustration that not all fear is useful to him. The fear that leads to curiosity, to boldness, to learning, these are my undoing. When someone channels fear into energy, I am forced to retreat. My power is not in fear itself, but in fear unexamined. The unasked question is my greatest ally. We explored how drifting is maintained by habit. People think of habit as harmless, but it is the silent builder of fate, he said. When routines are never challenged, when a day looks like the last and the next, life becomes a hallway with no doors. I need only keep people moving forward without looking up, and their potential is lost to the rhythm of the familiar. I asked about turning points. What actually causes a person to escape your web? The devil sighed. Pain is the most common catalyst. A crisis, a loss, a shock. These shake the foundation of routine. Suddenly, old fears seem less terrifying than a wasted life. But sometimes awakening comes through inspiration, a vision, a mentor, a moment of truth. These moments are dangerous to me. They create ripples of questioning and hope. He confessed his frustration with the unpredictable nature of awakening. You can drift for years and wake up in a heartbeat. My advantage is that most people will try to go back to sleep, rationalizing their way out of change. My work is to make the old world seem safer, to promise comfort in exchange for silence. As this confession unfolded, I saw that the devil's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. He depends on our cooperation, on our reluctance to challenge ourselves or the world. Every act of questioning, every moment of honesty, chips away at his foundation. So, as you listen to this confession, ask yourself, what fear still rules your decisions? What routines go unchallenged? What would happen if you questioned both right now? The confession was only beginning. The devil had more to reveal, and I was ready to ask the questions no one else dared. Picking up where we left off, I pressed the devil to name his most subtle tricks, the traps that catch even those who believe themselves awake. He grinned, more shadow than substance, and began to list them one by one. My first and most reliable is the comfort of routine. The mind seeks safety, and so it repeats what is known, what is easy, what demands no risk. This is not laziness, but the result of millions of years of survival instinct. I make the familiar seductive, and soon a person is imprisoned by their own habits, never questioning, never growing. He spoke at length about the myth of security. I convince people that security is the highest good. They trade their wildest dreams for a steady paycheck, their deepest desires for polite approval. The illusion is that safety will bring peace. But real peace, as you have discovered, only comes from participation, from risking, from failing, from daring to live awake. The devil described how he turns even positive routines against us. A person who wakes early, exercises, works hard, they can still drift if those actions are empty, done out of duty rather than desire. I let them believe that busyness is the same as purpose. Their calendar is full, but their spirit is absent. This, I admit, is one of my proudest deceptions. He revealed the danger of half awakenings. Some escape drifting only to settle for complacency. They become experts at analysis, endlessly planning, preparing, researching. I whisper that one more book, one more podcast, one more strategy is needed before they act. Perfectionism becomes their jailer. They postpone living in favor of endless improvement. Curious about resistance, I asked, what about those who persist? The ones who act, who risk, who dare to question even their own routines. The devil admitted, they are rare, but they exist. These are the creators, the builders, the rebels. They confuse my systems by refusing to settle. They treat discomfort as a signal, not a threat. They are willing to make mistakes publicly, to look foolish, to try again and again. Their resilience is not in never drifting, but in never giving up the right to choose. We discussed the power of questions. One honest question, the devil said, can undo years of drifting. Why am I doing this? What am I avoiding? Who am I becoming? The world fears these questions because they threaten the status quo. I have built entire industries, advertising, entertainment, even parts of education, to keep people from asking them. He described the final trap, resignation. When all else fails, I convince people that change is for others, that it's too late for them, or too risky, or too selfish to want more. I use cynicism, nostalgia, and even a twisted sense of wisdom to dull their hunger for more. But he confessed a weakness. Every confession, every moment of honesty cracks my armor. The more people admit what they fear, what they avoid, what they regret, the less hold I have. Truth, spoken aloud, or even whispered in the dark, is my undoing. As our exchange ended, I was reminded that freedom is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. Each day is a new chance to notice, to ask, to act. Drifting is patient, but so is the possibility of awakening. So, as you listen, ask yourself, where has comfort become your cage? What honest question have you avoided? What's the smallest risk you can take today to reclaim your freedom? The devil's confession was not yet complete. There were still secrets left to reveal, lessons that could turn even his tricks into your tools. Determined to expose every layer, I pushed the devil further. Tell me, what is the cost of drifting truly? Beyond missed opportunities and wasted years, what do people lose when they choose the comfort of routine over the discomfort of growth? His response was measured, almost mournful, as if even he understood the weight of what he was confessing. Drifting, he began, costs people their aliveness. It drains the color from life, turns days into repetitions, dreams into distant memories. It's not just the absence of success, but the absence of joy, meaning, and real connection. The tragedy is not only in what people never do, but in who they never become. He painted a vivid picture. A person can achieve outward success and still be dead inside. They can raise families, build careers, even earn respect, all while feeling like a stranger in their own life. Drifting isn't about failure in the eyes of the world. It's about failing to answer the call of your own spirit. I have watched people grow old without ever waking up, their best selves lost to fear and habit. I asked how drifting affects relationships. The devil nodded knowingly. Drifters love cautiously, protect themselves from pain at the cost of real intimacy. They avoid honest conversations, fearing conflict more than distance. They let resentment fester, apologize without changing, promise to try tomorrow. Drifting spreads silently, poisoning marriages, friendships, and families, not with violence, but with neglect, indifference, and 1,000 unspoken disappointments. He warned of generational impact. Children learn from what their parents tolerate, not just what they preach. If a child sees that dreams are always postponed, that truth is swallowed to keep the peace, that failure is a reason to shrink, they grow up already drifting. My legacy is passed on in sighs, in silences, in stories of what might have been. Curious about redemption, I asked, what is the first sign that someone is waking up? The devil admitted, restlessness is always the first spark. The discomfort that won't fade, the hunger for something more, the sudden awareness that time is passing. Some try to smother it with distraction. Others let it drive them to honest questions, new risks, and a second chance at life. He described the crucial crossroads. Awakening requires humility, the willingness to admit you've been asleep, to forgive yourself for the years lost, to start again as a beginner. Most will feel shame, but the wise see it as a sign of life. Shame becomes the invitation to honesty, and honesty, repeated, becomes transformation. We explored the possibility of renewal. There is no age limit on awakening, the devil confessed. A single decision, made in honesty, can reclaim decades of drifting. The world will resist, friends may not understand, but the courage to choose again is always available. He shared a final warning. Awareness once found must be guarded. Drifting waits patiently for your return. Comfort will tempt you. Doubt will whisper that change is a phase, not a new life. But each act of intentiono, no matter how small, is a step away from my influence. As this confession deepened, it was clear that the real enemy is not failure or pain, but passivity. Drifting steals your story in silence. The antidote is not to become fearless, but to become honest, present, and willing to act. So I urge you, notice the first signs of restlessness. Welcome discomfort as a messenger. Forgive the drift, but refuse to settle for it. Your story is always waiting to be reclaimed. With every answer, the devil's confessions grew less boastful and more revealing. I pressed for specifics. What then is the real turning point? How does an ordinary person in the thick of habit and fear actually begin to escape your influence? The devil's response was both simple and profound. Awakening starts not with action but with awareness, he said. It is the moment you notice yourself drifting, when you finally admit that your routines are running you, not the other way around. For some, it is triggered by pain. For others, by inspiration or the slow ache of restlessness that can't be explained away. The real turning point is honesty, courage to look at your life without excuse or denial. He warned that the next step is the most difficult. Once you are honest about drifting, you face the discomfort of change. Here, I do my best work. I tempt you with nostalgia for your old comfort, make you question your worth, or seduce you with the promise of tomorrow. Most people return to drifting at this stage, convincing themselves that awareness is enough. They forget that nothing changes without choice. I challenged him. What does the first act of awakening look like? The devil explained. It is always small, a conversation you've been avoiding, a decision made for yourself, not for others. A routine interrupted, a question asked out loud. Awakening is not a leap, but a series of steps, each one breaking the inertia of habit. We explored the role of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. The bravest are rarely the loudest. They are the ones who show up again and again, who risk embarrassment, who allow themselves to be beginners. The world admires dramatic change, but real transformation is built from small, repeated acts of intention. The devil outlined common traps along the path. I will always try to lure you back with comfort, with the promise that one more day of drifting won't matter. I use fatigue and self-doubt, comparisons and regret. But the wise expect my resistance. They design their environment, leave notes, set reminders, share their goals with friends. They make awakening harder to forget. He emphasized the importance of compassion toward oneself and others. You will drift again. Everyone does. The question is not whether you fall asleep, but how quickly you notice and return. The kindest people I lose are those who forgive themselves, who treat every new beginning as a victory, not a failure. We talked about community. No one awakens alone. Even one honest friend can double your chances. Seek out people who value growth. Avoid those who celebrate comfort at the expense of truth. Conversations with the awake will stir you when your own resolve wavers. As the confession continued, I saw that escaping the devil's grip is less about grand heroics and more about humble participation. To reclaim your story, you don't need to conquer fear once and for all. You need only to choose, today, to wake up and act. So ask yourself, where can you interrupt the drift, even in one small way? Who can you share your intention with? What's one act of courage, however tiny, you can take before the day ends? The devil's confession wasn't over, but the path out of his maze was already clear, step by honest step. The further our interview went, the more the devil was forced to admit his power is not absolute. If drifting begins with small compromises, so does freedom. But tell me, I challenged, what makes awakening last? How can a person prevent themselves from slipping back into old routines, from letting a single spark fade away? The devil answered thoughtfully, almost regretfully. Lasting change is built on ritual and reflection. People think awakening is a one-time event, a burst of courage, or a lucky break. But the ones I fear most are those who make awareness a habit. They start each day by noticing their state of mind, setting an intention, however small, and remembering why they want to live awake. This repeated act over time transforms drifting into conscious living. He described the importance of self-honesty. Honesty must become your default, not just an emergency measure. Most people only reflect when things go wrong. But if you question yourself on good days, if you ask, "Where am I drifting?" before disaster strikes, you become harder to sway. The habit of checking in, of listening to your discomfort before it becomes pain, keeps my influence weak. We spoke about setbacks. The devil was candid. You will drift again. You will relapse. This is not failure, but reality. The difference between those who stay lost and those who return is simple: the willingness to begin again. Forgiveness is your ally, shame is mine. Every time you treat a new start as progress, you rob me of another prisoner. He shared his frustration with people who build environments that support their new identity. If your surroundings remind you to choose, if you spend time with others who are also awake, my work becomes difficult. Group ritual-shared meals, honest conversations, community goal-street resilience, that routine alone cannot break. I asked, what about hope? What role does it play? The devil admitted, hope is dangerous to me. Even in small doses, it fuels the willingness to risk, to reach out, to believe that change is possible. Hope is the seed of every rebellion against drifting. My greatest victories come when I convince people that nothing will ever change, that it's too late, that trying is pointless. He warned about complacency. Never mistake progress for permanence. Drifting waits for you at every level, after victory, after loss, even in the midst of growth. The ones I lose are the ones who keep returning, who see each day as a new chance to participate. Finally, he described the power of story. The most awakened are those who rewrite their narrative, who tell themselves a new story about what is possible. Old identities keep you trapped, but a new story creates space for change. As the confession drew to a close, it was clear that the devil's hold is real but fragile. Drifting is always waiting, but so is awakening. The smallest act of intention can rewrite the story, no matter how long you've been asleep. So, as you finish this part of the journey, ask yourself, what ritual will remind you to wake up? What old story are you ready to rewrite? The devil's confession may continue, but so can your freedom, one honest day at a time. As the confession grew deeper, I pressed the devil on how people can maintain their freedom, not just for a day or a week, but for a lifetime. He spoke now with less bravado, more reluctant respect. Persistence, he said, is the quality I find most troublesome. The world celebrates talent, luck, even genius, but it's persistence, ordinary, unglamorous persistence, that weakens my influence more than anything. He described how truly awakened people treat every day as a practice. They do not wait for inspiration or motivation. They plan for resistance-setting reminders, asking for support, making their intention visible in their environment. If they drift, they notice quickly. They see relapse not as failure, but as a signal to return, to recommit. Every return makes my work a little harder. We explored the strategies that support persistence. Routine is a double-edged sword, the devil admitted. It can trap you in comfort, or it can anchor you in growth. The difference is intention. Awakened people choose routines that pull them forward: journaling, reflection, daily movement, honest check-ins with allies. They make change easy to remember and hard to ignore. He warned about the danger of waiting for a perfect time. I tempt people with the idea that conditions must be just right, that a new job, a new year, or a new relationship will finally give them a clean slate. The truth is, change starts where you are, with what you have. The only perfect moment is the one you choose. We discussed how the world resists persistent change. Society rewards you for fitting in, for not asking too many questions. Even loved ones may feel threatened by your awakening. They fear being left behind or challenged to wake themselves. The wise respond with patience, not pressure. They invite rather than insist. They let their actions be the invitation. He spoke almost wistfully about humility. Persistence is not prideful, it's humble. It means admitting when you've drifted, apologizing without self-judgment, starting over without drama. It is a quiet courage, a willingness to look foolish, to keep trying, to become a student again, no matter your age or achievements. The devil revealed his greatest obstacle: community. Even one honest friend, one supportive group can disrupt years of drifting. The ones who stay awake reach out often, they share their struggles, ask hard questions, and refuse to let shame keep them silent. He finished with a challenge. If you want to keep me at bay, don't try to be perfect. Try to participate, try to notice, try to return. Every day you choose to wake, even briefly, is a day I lose ground. As this part of the confession ended, I saw the simple truth. The path to freedom is not a single leap, but 1,000 small returns. Drifting will always call, but awakening can always answer again and again and again. So, ask yourself, where can you show up with persistence today? Who can help you notice when you drift? What small return can you make before the day is over? As the devil's confession neared its end, a new theme emerged: the extraordinary power of the present moment. I pressed him. You've described how drifting and fear keep people anchored in their past failures and future anxieties. What happens when someone finally lives here and now? He hesitated, then replied, "The present is the only place I cannot follow. All my tools, regret, distraction, anticipation, require you to abandon this moment." Drifters are always elsewhere, reliving old mistakes, planning tomorrow, wishing for a different life. The awake, however, make their home in the now. This is the ground where my influence fades. The devil explained how true freedom is never found in the someday that never arrives. People postpone their dreams, believing the future will be safer, easier, more certain. But life is always lived in the present. The ones I fear most are those who act now, who risk, who speak, who create, who love, even in the face of uncertainty. They do not wait for perfect clarity or permission. They wake up to the possibility in every ordinary moment. We discussed mindfulness, the practical discipline of returning to the present. Mindfulness is not a mystical escape, the devil said. It is a practical rebellion. To pause, to notice your breath, your thoughts, your choices, that is, to become ungovernable by fear. Awareness cuts every rope I try to tie. Each time you bring your attention back, you make it harder for me to distract you. He described how daily rituals of presence disrupt his work. A moment of gratitude, a slow meal, an honest conversation, a walk without a phone. Each practice returns you to yourself. These are not grand gestures, but small acts of defiance against the world of drift. The devil confessed, almost with respect, that the greatest change comes not from grand decisions, but from humble, repeated participation in the present. You do not have to solve your whole life today. You need only to participate here now. Drifting depends on postponement. Freedom depends on your willingness to begin. He warned of the temptations that wait even in the now. The urge to hurry, to multitask, to fill silence with noise, these are my last defenses. But the awake become skilled at noticing. They pause, they question, they return. In the present, every distraction is a chance to come back, every mistake a cue to begin again. We spoke of legacy. The only moment you shape the future is now. The only time to rewrite your story is now. Every act of presence plants a seed, first in your own life, then in the world around you. The greatest revolutions are invisible: a habit interrupted, a word spoken with intention, a day lived awake. As the confession reached its final chapters, the devil's grip had never seemed weaker. The awakened know, drifting is an invitation, not a sentence. Every present moment is a doorway. So, ask yourself, how can you return to the now, right here, right now? What small act of attention will you give this moment? In choosing presence, you outwit the devil one breath, one decision, one heartbeat at a time. As the final act of this confession began, I asked the devil to share his greatest regret, if such a creature could regret. He paused, a shadow flickering across whatever passed for his features. My greatest regret, he admitted, is that no matter how many I lull into drifting, there are always some who wake. Not by luck, nor by force, but by participation, by showing up again and again in the present moment. My grip is never total. There are always cracks. He went on, I have witnessed the smallest moments shatter years of drifting. A phone call made, a truth spoken, a boundary set, a habit changed. Grand gestures may fail, but ordinary courage repeated daily undoes my work. Every time a person chooses to begin again, no matter how late the hour or how small the act, they chip away at my foundation. The devil described how true transformation is built not on a single awakening, but on hundreds of quiet choices. There is no final victory over drifting, only a practice of attention, a discipline of honesty. I lose power each time someone dares to try, fails, forgives themselves, and tries again. Their willingness to begin, to return, to stay present is my undoing. We explored the practical tools of staying awake. Write your intention each morning, he said. Share it with a friend. Interrupt one routine that keeps you numb. Set your environment to remind you notes, alarms, conversations, moments of stillness. Don't wait for motivation or clarity. The world will always give you reasons to postpone. But change is always possible now with what you have. The devil confessed his greatest frustration. Most people believe freedom is far away, something to earn or deserve. But the door is always open, and the key is always within reach. The ones I lose are those who stop waiting for permission and start living as if they are already free. He warned that the voice of drifting never fully disappears. Even in the present, you will hear the old songs of comfort, fear, and delay. But each time you choose presence, each time you participate, you make my work harder and your life richer. The practice of returning again and again creates resilience no setback can erase. As this confession drew to its close, I was left with a simple, powerful realization. Drifting may be the devil's masterpiece, but awakening is always your own. The world will try to pull you away from yourself, but your presence is a rebellion, your honesty, a revolution, your willingness to begin again, the final, unbreakable act of freedom. So, as you stand at the threshold, ask yourself, what small act will you choose today? Where can you show up, just as you are, and claim your own awakening? The devil's secrets were finally exposed. Only your choice remained. As the confession reached its final moments, a shift was undeniable. The devil, stripped of his former arrogance, spoke with an honesty that surprised even him. Here at the end, I must confess, my greatest power is granted, not seized. Every time someone drifts, hesitates, or chooses comfort over growth, they place the keys in my hands. But the very moment they choose awareness, question, or action, those keys return to them. He described how people underestimate their own agency. You believe that life happens to you, that fate or luck or my influence is stronger than your own intention? That is the illusion I have spent centuries perfecting. But the truth is, every choice you make, every breath, every risk, every honest word writes your relationship to me. I pressed him to summarize what truly breaks his hold. The devil did not hesitate. Begin again. It sounds simple, almost naive. But in that act, beginning again, returning to your intention, refusing to be defined by your past, you shatter the architecture of drifting. Drifting survives only in silence, in secrets, in the story that says you are powerless. Speak your truth, share your struggle, invite others into your awakening. The more light you let in, the weaker I become. He spoke of community as the final fortress against drifting. One awakened person is powerful. Two can spark a revolution. A community built on honesty, support, and shared intention can resist even my best tricks. You are not meant to walk this path alone. The world is full of others waking up, longing to be found. The devil acknowledged the lingering temptations of comfort, distraction, and fear. They will always call. Some days you will drift again. But so long as you notice, so long as you return, so long as you remain willing to be present, I am kept at bay. Your freedom is not perfection, it is participation, practiced again and again. He offered one last challenge. Don't wait for the right moment. Don't believe the story that it's too late or that you must first become someone else. Freedom is available to you in the next breath, the next choice, the next act of courage. My confession ends here, but your story does not. As the devil's voice faded, I felt the weight of his words and odd gratitude for the clarity that comes from honest confrontation. Drifting is not a flaw, but a feature of being alive. The danger is not in falling asleep, but in never waking up. So I leave you with this. What will you do with your freedom now that you know how it works? What story will you write with your next decision? The devil's tricks are old, but your awakening is always new. The confession is over. Your part begins. The devil's voice, now weary but clear, offered his final admission. You have heard my secrets. You know how I work through fear, routine, the seduction of comfort, the myth of security, and the invisible chains of drifting. You know now that my power is not in the world itself, but in the choices people make every day. He spoke with an almost reluctant admiration for the awakened. You, who dare to question, who return to yourself in the present, who reach for community and speak your truth, you are the exception, but you are growing in number. Every act of courage, no matter how small, is a revolt against my reign. Every honest conversation, every time you forgive yourself and start again, you weaken my grip. The devil confessed that his favorite trick was always the long game. I whisper that there's plenty of time, that tomorrow is the safer day to change, that waiting for the right mood, the right chance, or the right permission is the wise thing. My greatest victory is not making you fail, but convincing you not to try at all. He warned that the world will always try to pull you back into drifting. There will be noise, pressure, and the old familiar comforts. You will be tempted to numb, to conform, to stay silent. But every time you choose to wake up, to participate, to risk a new path, you take back what was always your authorship over your story. He spoke of legacy. Awakening is not a finish line, but a practice. It's a lesson you pass on by example, by your willingness to be imperfect but present, by your refusal to give up the right to choose. Each time you begin again, you show others what's possible, and the world changes one decision at a time. As the interview drew to its close, the lesson was unmistakable. The devil's confession is not just a warning, but an invitation. Freedom is not something you find, but something you practice through honest noticing, daily participation, and the courage to begin again. I thank the devil, not for his tricks, but for the clarity that comes when the shadows are named. I stepped from that confession not with fear, but with a renewed sense of purpose. My life, like yours, is not defined by drifting or defeat, but by the willingness to wake, to choose, and to create meaning, moment by moment. So, as this confession ends and your story continues, remember, no voice, not even the devil, can drown out your own, once you decide to speak. The confession is over. The practice of freedom has just begun.